Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of I Am Legion for Dying Light 1 and 2. My name is Jason, the creator of the mod, and I'm here today with another feature update. So I wanted to get another feature out to you guys while the ongoing development is happening for the Armor Overhaul. So had some exciting news, and while I'm discussing here, this will be Insanity that I'm playing here in the background. So if you guys are curious what Insanity looks like, especially during the day, I'll make sure to switch to night here in a little bit. But usually while I play, I try to, or while I talk about the feature update, I try to play so you guys can kind of get an idea of all the latest features and how the game is running. So in this latest version, there's been a lot of updates. There's definitely been the Goodnight and Goodluck update that came out. Took a couple of updates with the mod to get things balanced out. I'm happy to report that things appear to be running fairly well with the mod. One of the systems that appears to have kind of inconsistent glitches is the noise and reinforcement system. I know a couple of people also mentioned that the companion spawning has been having difficulty. I myself have not had any issues with this system, so if you are encountering things, always make sure to start with mod compatibility if you're having any issues while you're playing. Some of these mods need to be reviewed, especially ones that are outdated on the Nexus, to make sure that they're actually compatible with the mod, but also are compatible with your save game and game version. So diving into what we're going to talk about here today. So while I've been working on the Armor Overhaul, it's been a very busy month. I haven't had as much time to commit to the mod as I've wanted to this month. I've had some other exciting news, so I can confirm for those of you who have asked that Techland has reached out. As a matter of fact, I've heard a discussion point that Timon was playing the mod just the other day. So looking forward to hearing feedback from Techland to see what their thoughts are on the mod and where it fits into the universe, the Dying Light universe. And it's been a lot of balancing and updates here to try to make sure everything's fluid during this time, especially with these latest updates. I know how much you guys are wanting to play some of these latest difficulty updates, and so looking forward to your guys' feedback as well, and happy to discuss what's coming next. So part of this discussion is going to be looking at the roadmap coming up, and then part of the discussion is going to be on what I'm releasing today. So I'm happy to announce, and huge shout out to all my Patreon supporters. So thank you guys so much. To switch the camera view over really quick, we did hit that first milestone, that 50 plus Patreon supporters. Thank you guys so much for your support of the mod over the last couple of months and over the last year and a half now. You guys have been the driving force and the reason that the mod has continued on this far. Thank you guys so much for encouraging and continuing to drive forward the design. I really appreciate all of your efforts to support my work and give me feedback. So thank you guys so much. And so I'm here today. So in that update, you can see I said 5 new infected types. Well, I'm excited to report that I actually have 7 to showcase to you today. So I actually was going through, and these are going to be custom new infected. So I'm still working on some visuals for some of them, but I do have some custom infected to showcase here today. So first and foremost, I'll go ahead and kind of describe what those look like and kind of what their role is before all the documentation kind of rolls out so you guys are aware of what's coming. So first and foremost, I wanted to create a version of the Banshee that was a little bit more than what the current version is. So the current version, a lot of people have mentioned that they don't like the jump attack, always honing in on the player, kind of constantly tackling the player as you're trying to get away. I have added an update that I believe has stopped the auto-targeting system for when the Banshee jumps towards the player. So for the standard Banshee, I think you should be able to have a little bit better gameplay where that Banshee won't always hit the player with that long jump. But for this new one, I wanted to create a Banshee that was kind of creepy and that worked as a alert system. So as many of you know, I've been working working on this idea of trying to create a randomized world and kind of drive forward the open world environment. And so this character is actually going to help with some of that. So I'm going to go ahead and spawn in, and it's interesting that they're actually, we've got so many humans right here. So we'll try near the base and just kind of see what happens here. But hopefully this will showcase some of this new enemy AI right here for everybody. So first and foremost, this is the Banshee that we were talking about. So currently it's using the pool of Banshees that I've created, which this is one of them, the child Banshees, the female child Banshees, and then also the idea of and I've also included the regular looking Banshees for now. I haven't figured out a look just yet for this Banshee, but the idea is that this Banshee's main goal is to always keep the player within sight. It can spit and it will call out your location to other enemies, but it will go up and hang out on the rooftops. And so it'll kind of look down at you and continuously annoy you with a with a spit assault from afar. So let me go ahead and alert them, and you can kind of see them in action here. So the idea is that this Banshee is meant more to make the world wake up and to kind of drive forward the idea that you're constantly being watched inside the world by the different creatures. And so if we start to run away here, you can see they do a little bit of infected damage, but they essentially are kind of built off of the code that's being utilized for the companions. And so this, and I actually have started using the code that I wrote for the companions with the infected as of this update, to where this creature will kind of follow you around the map. So as you continue to parkour, it will also kind of try to keep up. And you can lose this Banshee over time. It's just a matter of getting a far enough away distance that you actually cause it to lose where you're at on the map. And so kind of just a fun new version. It looks like for some reason she's not going up onto the rooftops quite as much as I was expecting here. But her main code is kind of designed to go upward. I must have, in my latest fix, I must have disabled something that just drives her always up. So the idea is that when this releases, you can expect to find this Banshee constantly trying to go up high and then kind of sticking there. So the idea is that she'll try to sit on the rooftops and kind of fire down at you, similar to the Bowman. So keep an eye out for that. So the next is going to be, so you already saw a couple here get spawned. Let's go ahead and bring in the next set. So some of them die by the daylight, and so a couple of them died there. But I've also brought in the idea of the thug. So from the earliest Dead Island games and then the earlier zombie games that I played, there was always kind of this hulking, bigger zombie who was just able to kind of kick ass as he went. Well, this guy is actually using so I found several hidden attack files for the biters when I was creating him, and so he's actually using 3 currently not used attacks that were found in the files, and so he actually does a lot of damage, and he has a couple of different attacks that he'll use to kind of break through the enemy lines there. And currently I'm using the overall just the overall biter appearances, and so I'm not using any custom appearances for them just yet. I am happy to report that I have discovered that the limitation that I was facing before, so previously I think I was right at 1,200 custom models, and that was actually due to a limiter that was in the system to where the game would actually not run once you loaded more models than that. So no joke, I had the exact number before the whole thing maxed out, and I would have to delete the different ones as I was going to make room for new concepts. I am happy to report that it looks like they fixed whatever was causing that on the back end, and so we do actually have those moving or those shifting and moving models over time. And so I am continuing to create new models. I am aware some people reported recently that the invisible biter, I put out an update where just this week I went and recreated all 870 different zombie biters in an attempt to remove the models that are causing the invisible zombie issue. And sadly, I have to say that based on earlier reports, and actually what I've seen in the game since testing, is it looks like we still have some invisible zombies inside the code, and so including a viral. And so I'm going to have to just go one by one through these files, which is one of the reasons I don't want to create so many custom models right away, is because as the updates continue to roll out, you never know, they replace a piece of hair or a material or something, and all of a sudden the whole model no longer works, and you have to go hand crawl through everything to find it. Pretty time consuming, definitely the most time consuming of all the things I've added to the mod. So additional to the thugs, so we actually have 3 different types of crawlers now. One new crawler, so I've completely redone the enraged crawler concept. So now you'll have a regular crawler, but you'll also now have the enraged crawler. And the enraged crawler, you can see 2 of them here. You have the male and the female enraged crawlers. And then you also have the Venom enraged crawler, and it looks like right now it looks like they're dying to the daylight. So some code must have been messed up in my Git merge for this to be occurring. So I'll have to review to figure out why all of a sudden here. It's only when you're trying to showcase something that things stop working how you intended. So again, when that's released, you'll be seeing these guys crawling around the world. Not sure what happened there, but the idea is that with the crawlers, you're going to have the enraged crawler, which you'll actually see start to crawl the world, and then you'll also have the new Venom crawlers. So you have the Venom enraged crawler, which is actually special infected crawlers that have been burnt from either the world burners or the flamethrowers or whatever it was. These are the special infected that you lit up the night before, who are now crawling through the city. And if they grab your leg and bite you, they can inflict a venom damage as well. And so you can see there when they bite you, they actually take a pretty good chunk out of your health. And so you want to avoid those guys at all costs, but I did try to give them some unique appearances, so you're kind of looking out for them as you go. Ouch. And so you'll see them crawling around the world, but the idea is that you now will have these special infected out here in the day that are not doing so hot. They're definitely on their last leg, but you will still see them out here in the world to kind of explain what happened to them from the night to the day. And then probably the one that you're probably seeing, and the one that's the result of all this, is that we have a new type of spitter. So we have two new types of spitters. One is the enraged spitter, which the enraged spitter actually has basically all his defensive settings have just been turned off. At night, he's basically just going to go as hard as he can to kill the player. And so he'll be working overtime to make sure that he kills you before dying. And then you have the new spitter vomiter. So this is my new vomiter spitter, who is kind of based off of the boomer from Left 4 Dead, who his main attack is going to be obviously spit. And he's going to spend most of his time either in day or night, but his main attack is obviously just vomiting continuously. He'll move around the map and vomit by himself, so you can be up on the cities or up on the buildings looking down, and you'll just see him off in the distance. It's actually kind of cool to watch him just kind of progress. But then when he spots the player, he'll just kind of move towards the player and continuously throw up as he goes. And so he's actually a new favorite of mine. He definitely makes it more interesting, especially in interiors where he may spawn, just because he does a good amount of area damage with his toxin. And so you'll have to keep an eye out for him as you go. Then let's actually go ahead and switch over to nighttime. So I hate that I'm in this area though, because it's gonna, let me try to get to a different location because it's gonna spawn me downstairs inside the metro. It's definitely my least favorite place to spawn on this map. In addition to all the new enemies, I've also tried to rebalance and upgrade most of the AI. So I did make some changes to the Screamers as well. So the Screamers will now actually chase the player again. So that was in the code a while back, but it did get pulled out a little ways ago for an error that was occurring. That is back in the mod, and so you will now see them start to run towards you. It actually is kind of funny because you usually try to avoid those enemies, and so it's actually kind of fun where all of a sudden you're like, what do I? You have this immediate feeling like you just want to like back up or get away from it. You don't actually want to deal with it. And so I know for me, a couple of times when going through the interior buildings especially, so I've also updated the code where the bigger zombies, the goons and the demolishers, they should be able to go through the doorways now inside of the interiors, which will definitely make them more difficult when you encounter them inside the interiors. The volatiles are doing a great job of searching inside of interiors now. I'm very happy with their AI at this point. And also now the Screamers will also now chase the player as you go through the interiors as well. So I went ahead to switch over to night so I could spawn that same group of zombies so you could kind of get an idea of what that will look like here at night. I've also looked at the human AI. I know a couple of people reported that they're not as intense as they were before. That's actually one of my thugs right there. And I can report that they are difficult. Several of them have had damage boosted, and to make them a little bit more intelligent. They also will traverse buildings, and I've actually really enjoyed lately the latest version of the human AI logic because I had several renegades the other day that were kind of watching me from the rooftops. They actually came and lined up on the rooftops and were looking down at me, and it actually felt pretty good to be kind of creepily looked down on like that, because it just kind of lets you know, like, at any second you could do something that would actually trigger them to where they'll come down and actually attack. And there we go. Hopefully you guys enjoy those new audio sound bites as well. So that's, and I shouldn't say new, I apologize. So that's actually the Demolisher. And so I've had to nitpick in between the different enemies there to kind of blend them together to make these new enemies. And it's been challenging, but hey, you guys deserve it. Again, cannot believe you guys are jumping on and supporting the mod like this. Thank you guys so much. A lot of things in store, a lot of things coming up. I hope you guys enjoy. And so I wanted to show my appreciation back to you guys. So we got a couple more minutes here before it hits dark. So several quality of life improvements. I definitely spotted several smaller bugs as I was going through the process, and so I'll have a complete list as always when I actually release the mod with a couple of these fixes as I've seen here. But Stay tuned for that coming here tonight. I'm super excited to get some new content in here for you guys, and excited to show you guys what's been put together for the armor. So I've actually got quite hopefully an interesting approach for the armor that I've been working on that you guys hopefully will appreciate. And it is going to be a game changer, I think, here for all future updates that are done by myself. All right, let's go ahead and spawn these enemies here. Got 3 of these left. All right. So these guys, the spitters, are especially dangerous now, the enraged spitters, because they're just going out of their way to find you and attack. And then I've also made it to where, so with all the enraged enemies, most of the time they will just attack, and that's how you know they're enraged, is that they're constantly just screaming or attacking. And so that will, renegade. That will be a good indicator that they're a bit more intense than the other enemies, because they're not just standing around waiting to be attacked. And so that is something that I'm always still trying to slowly factor out of this game, is that idea that you have these idle zombies just kind of hanging out and chilling inside the environment. I would much rather have them moving around. So here's our infected or our venomous crawler. And it was funny, I called in several of these earlier and pitted them up against the PK. They had a whole bunch of PK try to take them out. And those things, they're probably one of the more dangerous enemies inside the game now. The crawlers are just, because you can't really get a good angle on them. So they're actually pretty great. But one thing I will mention, so for the boomer is what I want to call him, but for the vomit zombie, he's currently set up to where he will not be killed by UV. So with most of the ones that I feel have like this coating on them, or they're already heavily covered in chemicals, I'm trying to build out the idea that they're able to survive. That was actually one of the plague zombies, but they're actually able to survive without having to without having to go under the shadows there. They finally got him. But hopefully this is also a good use of this model. I know for some of you, I know especially for myself, I'm not a big fan of the exploders inside the game, and so I wanted to try to find a way to bring that model into the world that would have kind of a different purpose. But let's go ahead and switch the game over. So like I said, lots of quality of life changes over the past couple of weeks. Hope you guys have been enjoying, and as you can see here, the world is still filling up and dangerous. I will mention, while I've got everybody on the line, that there have been a few spawn bugs. I know several people have reported a lot of different things across the different save games. So as we've been going with this mod and the game, I've learned a lot about the save game system and what it's kind of baking into the system. And to be honest, I'm still kind of confused by some of it, but I will mention that I know some people have reported that they don't get, some people, it's like they don't see screamers or spitters at night, and some people don't see volatiles. And some people do, and so it's still something I'm trying to kind of figure out why that is the case, so that we can start to kind of figure out how to solve for that problem across all the different save games. But as always, please make sure that you're backing up your saves as you go. As we continue to get the new versions of the mod in here, it will always be something that you'll need to make sure you have those save games ready in case you need to dial back. But, for example, here is one of the new Screamers. So they've received kind of this new burnt look, which I love. But the idea is that you now have these Screamers in the world that are actually more of the Husk Screamers. And so both are burnt out. They're the same functionality essentially as the original Screamer, outside of the fact that they will also now they're basically spawning in as much as the map as possible when they see you without starting an actual chase. So you can see here we now actually have a lot. Let me make sure I heal here. They're gonna get me. So they're constantly calling the map down on this location. I've found that this system actually works a little bit better than the chase system. So the longer you sit here and kind of hang out and upset these guys, the longer or the more the map will kind of start to block your exits, so to speak. And then you can see here it will start to call down the pack volatiles, which they will actually begin the hunt. So I know a lot of you had questions about the hunt system or the chase system. That's how it's currently set up, so that you can kind of start to enjoy the map a little bit more, not have to run away as much when you're trying to explore the map. In the beginning of the game, it was pretty much if a chase began, you always had to just run back to the base. You couldn't really survive the night. The idea here is that as you go, hopefully you can continue to refine your play styles to where you can actually start to survive the night even while a chase is active. So that's probably actually my favorite thing in here now, is trying to survive a night while actively being hunted. And trying to utilize the world space to kind of throw them off as you go. And I don't see the GRE Volatile just yet. Let me see if I can get him to spawn in. We'll keep pissing off this Screamer and see if it... There's one up on the roof. Hey, bud. So there's also a fun thing I'll mention while I got everybody on the line, is that there's also a fun thing with the visual effects. So the damage effects can currently, I am aware of the fact that they will disappear if you damage or start them over. And I think this is due to the fact that I'm essentially applying visual damage to the characters before they're actually damaged. And so on some of the characters, that first hit that you do on the different enemies, it will actually kind of not clean them off, but it'll effectively remove some of that scarring there, or that detail. Oh, they got me. All right, let's switch over and actually talk more about the roadmap, and then talk about the upcoming Armor release here. So I'm going to first switch over, and let's just go through the feature release and continue to talk about what is to come. So let's go ahead and switch this. So that first month there in May, I went ahead and updated this to where the focus was trying to bring insanity difficulty to the game. That took a little bit longer than I was hoping initially, but I did manage to get it in as I'm currently playing. So along with that came new custom enemies, new companions, pathway system, which, if for those of you that are not aware, it allows you to start the game with a set number of items in your inventory. I've also updated the regular start game to include a basic bow and a couple other items such as bandages. Never was a big fan of the fact that Aiden, has one weapon on him at the start of the game. Didn't make a lot of sense. So I've given him some weapons back. The Honor the Fallen event was the event that went on back in as a May, and it recently has come to an end. So that was released to where it would allow you to find dog tags from the fallen heroes, which were the different military enemies around the world. You could turn those in using the trader system. So you could actually get the blueprint system, which would allow you to refund those dog tags and get rewards. Since then, to make sure that everybody's save games and inventories stay safe, I'm no longer removing items. It's going to be a big thing for this upcoming upcoming Armor Overhaul, but I'm trying to leave those original items intact and build new ones on top of them. So in this case, you should be able to now redeem those dog tags for money. If you originally had those blueprints and everything set up, they will no longer show up. So if you already had them in the world, you can continue to use them. If you missed the event, that's okay. Plenty of events planned for this upcoming year, more things to come, but that current event has now closed out. Most of the time I'm going to try to make it about every 2 months, so it'll be active for about 2 months, and then I'll pull it down and come up with another one. So also release the Camouflage system, which allows you to find camouflage inside the world. This is a huge component for the insanity difficulty. I can't stress enough, you just watch me kind of run around and jump over everybody's heads, but if I actually switch back really quick and we go in here, looks like this save game doesn't actually have them, and I don't have I should have been doing more looting. Let me actually just go loot while we talk. So kind of the idea is that as we continue to explore the world, you'll be able to find substances on the enemies that you're killing. So as you start to see the different enemies in the world, there's no way I can loot these guys. Might as well call this thing the lawnmower blade. Mows down enemies. Let's see if I can find one. There we go. I think I should only need that one, but let me see if I can get a shrieker weapon as well. Or a shrieker tool. There we go. All right, there we go. I've got a couple. So the idea here is that if you want to be able to actually survive inside the world and be able to continue to loot as you're traveling around the world and you encounter enough enemies to where you need to continue to evade, you can utilize these substances. So I can apply these while I'm running. And I'm actually camouflaged, so if you cut off your light, you can still use your light, but sometimes it will alert certain enemies. And so the enemies will actually leave me alone now. There we go. There's my screamer crawling around after me. So I can go back here to this original site and start to loot. And so the idea here is that as you're exploring the dangerous world, you can actually utilize this camouflage system to kind of benefit you in the long run as far as difficulty goes. So if you're struggling with some of the difficulty, you want to be able to go in here and discover more and be able to play the harder difficulties. Please know that the balancing that I'm trying to go for is really about you using the map to your advantage. So for all those quests that you're like, this quest is absolutely insane. Oh, there's our GRE Volatile. Let me go ahead and show him off. I'm glad we jumped back in. Well, I'm not going to get a chance. Oof. Oh, come on, come on, come on. This guy was a lot of fun. He's currently behaving like a volatile. I don't have as many animations available to continue to make the unique enemies how I would like to, but I am trying to do what I can with what I got to try to bring you some new creepy looking individuals inside the world and make this world a lot more intense. And he definitely changed the game as far as a super just creepy looking individual. And I'm still looking at, don't hate me, but in the future we may get enemies that just kind of watch you, and I can definitely see him as one of the enemies that would just kind of watch you across the map and call in call in things after you. So I might continue to make different variations as we go. We'll see, but it's all about that balance. I want to continue to try to balance these guys as we go. So say you're being pursued similar to this, and you want to be able to get away from these enemies. So say I'm in pursuit. Let me switch my... So I'm in pursuit. I run around a corner. I musk up with even just a basic biter. See, they found me, so I got to keep moving. But do you see how close we were? So if I had a little bit better camouflage, I would have gotten away. So it's all around that idea that could we bring some of the bases down? Could we bring more of the things, make the world a little bit more dangerous, and then make it to where you're not running back to the base every time, but rather you're using the world elements, you're using the equipment found in the world to try to survive the night. Also, for those of you that are not aware, one bite from the volatile who's pounced on you will end your life if you're playing Survivor, Ultimate Survivor, or Insanity. So they're not going to sit there and take chunks out of you. They'll actually take you down. So let me go back to the actual roadmap. Thank you for your patience, as I just wanted to show off some more of those details there. So that's the camouflage system. The damage system update was to, oh, and I realized, I apologize, I had the audio off there. But with the damage system, it was updating all the models to support the new damage system. It took a little bit of work. Then there was also the overhaul to the mod config, which added the entire system where you could then, at the top, it's all ordered and sorted so that you have headers and formatting and expanding several of the systems inside the mod config. So it actually ended up getting pretty much doubled in size with that mod config update. And then there was the actual kernel overhaul as well, which redid a lot of the kernel's min display to add in those marine looking units to build out that idea of here in the future. I am still trying to build out that idea of commandos, but then also enemies that use special weapons inside the world to bring you that new air of enemy that is using the world a little bit different than other enemies. Here in June, we had the actual Goodnight and Goodluck system or update, which started at the end of last month. That has gone through, I think, 5 updates to be the current version that it's at now. And this will be the 5th, I think, that I'm releasing tonight. So please stand by for that. And so along with that is the new improvements to the chase system. Had to work pretty hard to balance the system back out with this new improved chase system and hunt system. Thank you all for your feedback to kind of support, where that was going and help provide insight. There was also the throwing weapon update as well. So I did create the concept of throwing weapons, and those were geared around the ability. So to switch my screen back really quick, and I'll turn the audio back on so we can actually see and here, that was built around the idea that if you wanted to actually be able to find throwing weapons inside the world, that you could have enemies throwing these weapons, and it would use a similar system to what the enemies were already using. And so that idea of having throwing hammers or throwing axes was something that I was really excited about, to get those in the hands of the enemy AI. And so that's actually what I'm working on now, is also trying to bring these over to the hands of the enemy AI so that they're using them as well, so that they're no longer using things like rocks and that one throwing knife kind of thing. Similar to the flamethrower, I'm also still trying to get that to work with the AI as well. Haven't had as much luck with that, but you can see here that if you equip this, you can actually throw those throwing axes, and they do a bit more damage than the throwing knives. And so if you want to use those as you're running through the world with your weapons, I do realize that they now have the concept of throwing your weapon. To be honest, I still haven't gotten it to work yet for me really well to feel like it's been truly replaced. And so last couple of times I've been doing it, I felt like it kind of worked. But it's not quite as fluid as the first game as far as I was seeing. So I still have to look at it. And I apologize. I thought, wrong side. Oh, and I think that's because the key bindings have changed. So hold and then press F. Okay, so that's why. All right. And then I'm assuming, yep, I can pick that back up. So I'm glad that they brought this system back and that we're able to utilize those weapons as throwing weapons. That's a great addition. Is one of my favorite things inside the game. I'm not a huge fan of that system there, where it's doing it quite like that, because I would probably want to change that a little bit, but it's I'm glad to see it back in the game, and it's something that I want to continue to work with. But that is also something that I wanted the idea of being able to very quickly swap your weapon and throw a weapon while fighting. So if you're in the middle of a fight and you need that opportunity moment, then you have that opportunity moment strike. Also, if you're using auto aim, so I have that turned off in the mod by default, you can turn that back on, but the auto aim will also be a big help for getting it to kind of perfectly line up that shot. I definitely have it a little bit more on the, it's up to the player to actually hit these guys correctly. But I think my favorite thing is you can just kind of lay down. I'm kind of hoping that people don't get enough of these blades to do this, but you can also just kind of rapid fire your way through the crowd here. Kind of similar to my flamethrower, but with throwing knives. All right, you guys, once again, I've gotten distracted off of the roadmap, so let me switch back really quick and we'll continue to go through here. So gameplay balancing was a huge component of this last month, making sure that things were working as expected. Also, I added the flares and the glow sticks concept. Hopefully you guys are enjoying that. The idea is that if you wanted to actually illuminate the world, illuminate your path, block off proper pathing during the day, if you find flares, you can actually throw those flares down. They'll still be there at night, and so you can kind of outline a good path to get away if you wanted to. You can also mark good dark zones where there's good loot, but maybe you're not strong enough to go in there at that moment. You want to start looting. It's another kind of an immersive thing instead of using your map. If you wanted to actually, never use your map again, how could you mark certain territories and mark certain rooftops so that in the future you could actually go up to a roof, look down on the city, and know exactly where something is because of the flares. I like that kind of gameplay. Overall improvements to the infected AI also came with this update as well, and that's actually where what led into a lot of the work that's come with this latest infected change and these 7 new enemies. And so that's kind of where, again, all this research continues to stack on top of each other. And so as I work on one, it kind of builds into what comes up in the next month. So let's turn over to the Armor Overhaul upgrade. So the Armor Overhaul upgrade, several people have asked in the Discord community, is taking the initial 350 outfits that I made at this back in, I think that was last year in September that took place, and that ended up being, I Am Legion was in 0.99 pre for like months while I was working on that system, because there are so many armors inside the game that can be used by the player but are not available to be used by the player. And so because of that, once I identified that they were all there just waiting to be hooked up, I spent a large amount of time trial and erroring each one of the armors to see what worked and what didn't work. Well, the problem with that is that you're kind of guesstimating as you go through. And thanks again to Techland. Thank you guys so much for the engine tools. Thankfully, with the engine tools, I can bring up the engine and actually see the visuals of those armors and quickly dial through. And so because of that, what that's actually allowed me to do is see how many more armor. I just kind of skim the surface, honestly, of the amount of armor that's in the game that's sitting there available that hasn't been utilized. And so because of that, I'm currently writing several new systems all at once. The main focus is going to be on immersion and the class system. So there will now be 4 classes. There's going to be unarmored, light, medium, and heavy. With each one of those, they have the ability to have the utility options. So for example, if you have an armor that has a lot of pockets or holsters, then you can carry more supplies. I like the idea of actually dialing down a lot of the inventory for the more difficult settings for the mod, so that in the future you can't just carry 50 weapons. But if you're going around the world and actually choose to get utility belts and all the different harnesses, you could actually carry 50 weapons, but that's where the weight system comes in. So I'm continuing to work on a new weight system where you have over 87 different attributes that are being applied with every armor set as a standard. And then on top of that, additional customized settings that are being applied to your skills with every piece of armor. And the best way I can describe this is that if you find a big metal metal helmet, this is massive bandit helmet, and you equip it, you should feel that inside the game. So if you equip that, you will get a narrowed FOV. It'll limit your view, and it will also limit your ability to do things like swim, glide, even your gravity weight. So as you're jumping, your jump height, all these systems to where you'll actually feel the armor. So as you begin to move through the city, and I'm a big fan of the update that they did with the physics overhaul for the movement, because while they did this update, I was actually doing all of this before they did the update, and then they did the update, and I saw the potential of this weight system and how much that'll actually make you feel the environment, to where if you put on the heaviest armor, you can't just jump from ledge to ledge. Like, you have to figure out how to move in the map based on what you're wearing. I like that kind of gameplay. And so because of that, I like this idea that if you fall in water and you're wearing heavy armor, and you've got all these pouches and all this stuff on, and you're maxed out on your inventory, you'll actually start to sink to the bottom, and you might actually have to go into your inventory and take off the armor to be able to swim to get out of the water. But slowly but surely working on it. Along with that is a protection system. So this idea that as you wear the different armor sets, unarmored is this idea that you remove all your gear and you can swim faster, run faster, move faster, see further, if that's specific to helmets. So if you've got a big bulky helmet on, or a hood, or whatever it is, it will obscure your vision, which is why for some things that's good to wear. And I will also mention that none of this will apply to the transmog system. So if you want to transmog your armor, you can still do that freely. This will apply directly to when you're wearing that one piece of armor, because that's where the protection system comes in. So for each piece of armor, it's being considered and weighed. Everyone is getting a description and a review, and all of that is being piped into a custom name system, a custom weight system, a custom protection system by armor object, which there are probably around 600 to 700 different armors inside the game. And so to help with this is actually where I would say it's taken longer, but it's going to save a lot of time in the meantime, or eventually, but it's not quite there yet. I've actually turned to start to write more Python code to actually do most of the heavy lifting. So I've designed a couple of scripts that are actually, I've got a couple of scripts that are doing things like building out JSON databases based on context. So if I feed it in a file, it understands what's in the file, how to pull certain attributes from that file. And then I have another Python script that's then using that information to build. And so the idea is that here in the near future, when it comes, and this is where it comes into one of the updates that I'll talk about here in a second, the enemy faction overhaul. It's where I identified that here in the future, this could help clear the pathway for a lot of new content, a lot of new exciting updates, because it really does, with this type of thing, it comes down to man hours. Trying to do this by myself is just not optimal for that amount of equipment, and also maintain a standard across them to where they're all equally as good. And so I want to try to make that possible. And so that's actually where code is probably going to come in and save the day and help clear the pathway on that. So I'll go ahead and share my screen here and pull up my little Python script so you guys can just kind of see the concept, and we can talk about, kind of what it's doing and how it's doing it. I will give a shout out, or not a shout out, but I will go ahead and throw out there that as someone who is not a Python developer, if you have the resources, if you have the energy to where you like that kind of thing, or you're interested in this project, and I apologize that the screen went blank because I'm adding the screen here so that you can see my script here. But if you have the expertise and would like to help contribute towards this towards this mission, it would be great if you could reach out to me and let me know, your experience, and if you're interested in helping contribute to this solution, because this is something that is taking a lot of energy to learn on the fly as I go, as well. And so because of that, it will be much easier in the future to actually be able to combine efforts here with someone else's ability, so that we can actually expedite the process here. But let me show you guys kind of what I put together already. I won't dive into too many specifics, but essentially the idea is that, and kind of where the power of this comes from, is that for every armor set you have inside the game, you have about 28 different fields that have to be filled in every time. So every time you're creating a new object, you're essentially responsible for at least like 28 of them, to make sure that 28 of them are done correctly every single time. So as I'm going through here and looking at any of the armor sets that I've created, I have to make sure to maintain the syntax of every single item in this game, because you don't often get a bug report that will show you properly, and that's not meant at anything at Techland. It's just that some of these bugs don't actually cause an error in the engine code. And so because of that, you will run into the case where something's erroring in the game. You just have no idea what it is. And when it comes to these, so I think this script is, these are all of my custom armors, 24,000 lines of code. When it comes to crawling this, even having tools that can understand the syntax and the formatting of this script, so that you can run a script to check for syntax errors. I mean, you're talking night and day. And so that's one of the things that I first started with, was how can I check the syntax and kind of see, what it's, if everything is done properly. Because if this is deleted, but I don't, and I think in this case, it would break the entire inventory. And so it may not tell me exactly the line that's broken, but it'll break the entire inventory. And so out of all the thousands of new items, I have to go line by line and try to figure out what's causing that error. So with this script, the idea is that if I wanted to go in here and create a system that would allow me to set some standards across the different things, like a torso. So every time I have a torso, I actually will have a class system. So earlier I said that there are, and I apologize for this, because there are 4 armor classes, but there's also currently 3 clothing classes as well. So I actually misspoke. There's actually 7 classes where the clothing is also being considered. It's not being weighed very heavily. You can wear, clothing and get protection benefits more so than you would if you removed all of your clothing. And so I'm trying to get down to that level of complexity here with the system. And so the idea here is that as you go through the script and you select a different slot where that armor is going to go, you can also quickly specify, okay, well, that's a heavy armor. If that's a heavy armor, what that means is that you have a part skill that's already associated, already set up, already named, and it immediately knows what it needs to be. And so this system is set up to where it'll greatly expedite the process. I have all the colors available for that different armor. So as I go, if I want to create these different armor sets, it's as easy as me hitting the create item. And the next part of this, and this is the biggest part, is going through and actually identifying and labeling every single piece of custom armor available. And I'm currently trying to set that up to where that is even filtered down by headpieces, by class, by all these different conditions, so that you could filter down and essentially say, I want to create a helmet that's a light, that's a medium armor, that gives this level of protection, and I want to create a legendary version of that. Well, you could do that in, probably 5 clicks using this software. And so that's kind of what I'm striving towards. I also set up a system to where and this is my favorite part, is that I've actually set up a system that is passing in all of the values for each one of these descriptors. So for example, for this headpiece and peacekeeper, once I actually have the visualization set up, that will actually utilize a keyword definition for each one of these pieces, so that when I generate all of these responses, I actually created a prompt that's being fed over to ChatGPT, to where it's taking all of these different details and considerations and then feeding that information over into ChatGPT. So for example, and these are super rough, so please don't judge me too heavily for this, but essentially the idea here is that as you select each one, it's essentially giving a description of that armor class, of what modifiers you're applying by changing the color. So for example, there's actually logic happening behind the doors here, where if you select heavy armor, you select peacekeeper, you select worker, you select color, all of that also has a point designator assigned to it for protection. So you're also associating based on co-op role. So if you're a tank, then you actually get a modifier applied to that. So it's actually generating the rank and the armor points all behind doors, closed doors, with the system that I'm setting up. And the hope here is in what I'm trying to achieve, is that at the end of this, I'll be able to say, okay, for each one of these different groups, which I have a cosmetic update coming as well here soon. But for each one of these classes, I designate how many different ones I want, how many different colors, how many different armors, based on what's available. And then I'm going to mass produce and mass generate all of these different items. And for each one that's generated, it's going to then send that information over. So if we call, like, this is a test, I don't have all of the visualizations set up yet for all of the different headsets and for all the different models. But if we go in here and say create item, and we look over here at the screen, it'll actually go and take those keywords that it's generating. It'll actually send that over to ChatGPT, and then it will actually receive the response for that item, and it will actually create that item set for me. And so I believe, yeah, it should be here in output. So for each one of those things that is set up in here, it's going through and it's actually creating each one of those things based on this drop-down system, and then it's actually going and putting those in and formatting them properly. The part that I haven't finished the script, and so there's still work that has to go into it, but just with what it currently does inside the system is, I'm talking about, like, we're talking man hours of like full-time work, at least like a week worth of work to get all these systems where I want it. If I can break through on this script and get everything set up how I want, we're talking about a day worth of work. And so I'm working pretty hard to try to get the script going. But the biggest thing about this is that it's rough now, but in the future, I will be releasing these tools so that other people can create armors, can create weapons. This is not just for armor. This is a concept that will apply to models for the characters, for humans. This will apply to weapons. This will apply to armor, for Night Runner tools. There's just so many different things that you could do with this type of system to allow anybody to be able to create content for the game. And stay tuned for that. So another part that it's also printing out, so it went through and ignored the syntax on this last one. And actually, I think it should be printing to the appropriate one here, down here at the bottom. Yeah, there we go. And so it went and it generated a name, a working name and description for this object. And I didn't have to do a single thing. Where what really comes into play here is refining the quality. And so dialing that quality into where it's not super generic, but it's actually well done. And the biggest part of that is going to be getting the actual information by the actual description of armor piece itself to lend to this discussion, to lend to this name in the descriptor. So it's going to be a lot of hard work, but in the end, it should have a lot of benefits over doing this by hand. And this was months worth of work that I did previously. Back when I first did this, I didn't actually have the ability. I didn't know how to get these names into the game. So now that I know how to get the names into the game, the problem is now that I know, I'm responsible for it. So I am trying to make sure that everything that's being generated is also generating stats. It's generating a name. It'll have all that information baked into it so that it's not all written by hand. So stay tuned. Exciting stuff. Looking forward to sharing with you guys here in the future. Let's go back over to the roadmap and finish this up. Apologize for once again another long video here, but a lot of things to talk about, a lot of things to cover here. So with the new boss system here in August, the next one is going to be adding unique encounters. That's going to require some map work and actually setting up things inside the map to where you actually have some unique experiences with all of these different varied enemies that I've created. I mean, it's hundreds of new enemies at this point. And so if you haven't seen the numbers, I did stack those together. It's now part of the README document if you want to go see how many different variants, how many different models have been created. And that was done a week ago. And since then, tack another 200 models added on to that, another 7 presets for different enemy variants. So we're growing, we're building slowly but surely. Also the boss tier system. So I'm working on a Nemesis system, which will allow you to encounter different bosses around the world as you play. I want to try to lend off the Lord of the Rings Nemesis system to where it's built more around the idea that if you defeat one boss, you may encounter that same boss again, but as a tier 2 version of that boss or a tier 3 version. I'm still looking at how that could be created. I'm also looking at a wave spawner system so that you and your friends could play against hordes and waves. I also like the idea of doing that within bases so that you're defending bases coming up as well. And so I have a couple of things worked up there, but then also the companions will be receiving unique behaviors as well. So currently the companions are working pretty well. They're utilizing the same logic for each one of the different companions. There's currently a split there where you have the companions that use melee weapons, and then you have the ones that use bows, and that's as complex as they are right now. In the future here, I'm looking to go and actually create custom unique companions to where they're actually able to have different weapon types or unique behaviors on the battlefield to where they're actually, less likely to dive in and be a berserker, while other ones based on personality are actually, more aggressive and willing to go in there and charge in and attack enemies. And so that's all for the Patreon supporters. Those are all things that you can immediately access through the companion bundle. For everybody else, you can currently find the free to access ones in the accessories, but I've also added them to the world, and there is a trading system coming soon so that you can actually trade some of those systems you can actually trade some of those guys to where you can trade and purchase these different custom assets here in the future so that it's a little bit easier to access. It's been a little bit of a research struggle with trying to find the best way to support new areas, new bases, and new traders, along with the current flow with the main map, because it's so easy to break a quest, easily, break an area that's been baked and built. By breaking that apart, you're essentially adding increased rendering costs and all sorts of problems. So there is a trading system coming. I planned on having a better system for accessing all the new content by now, but I apologize. It has taken a bit longer than I was hoping. In September, we have the survival effects system coming up. So currently that was developed up to the point that we had food and water items inside the world. I know a lot of people mentioned that it filled up your inventories. That will be coming as an optional down the road. And I'm still identifying the best way to utilize the current systems inside the game to pull off that system. I have an approach, but it's going to take a lot of work, and so that's gotten moved out and shifted around a little bit. But I have also heard from Techland that they are interested in this system, and so hopefully here in the future we can actually work together to solve for that challenge. I'm not sure what's possible, but I'm excited for the opportunity. Next, we have the Bandit overhaul, and that is where I've been working on these new factions. One of the biggest things with the new factions is that I didn't want to release new factions and then have kind of very rough, quick cookie cutter models put together, because when it comes to the infected, it's a little bit easier to make those rapidly. When it comes to the humans, they have, I think now it's like 28 different slots available to add weapons, different clothing. That doesn't even include their materials or anything like that. I've started writing the code to actually be able to, first I'm writing the code, it's actually very long, probably not complex dot model files, but it's long enough to where I've broken enough things over time to know that to pull off this many enemy factions, I actually want to release a couple at a time and get your guys' feedback. But in order to pull it off how I want to, and then also establish tools that in the future we could actually create new characters on the fly, I'm looking at utilizing the code that I just showed previously, the Python code, to be able to do the same thing. So we take a descriptor, we take some attributes of what they look like, and then we generate a name. And if you had a drop down that actually had images of faces and all that good stuff, we could crank out, all sorts of new NPCs, new factions pretty rapidly. And so that's what I'm building towards. Hopefully those tools will get knocked out as fast as I'm hoping, so that we can start to actually add in some of this content much faster in the future. And as I mentioned before, those would be tools that would go on to be released to the public as well, so that everybody else could also create content for this game in the future. A big part of it is getting not just the model, but then injecting the model into the game. I can't tell you how long I wasted today just trying to get the new enemies in there. It's been a multiple day effort for sure, but just trying to get them added to the list, the level lists, without syntax errors or whatever, trying to inject them into all the pools. You never know where there'll be some syntax error that's starting to cause crashes. And so the more that gets turned into automated code that's able to detect error, the better. And then for the new base building features, so the base building system up to this point has been largely blocked out with most of the systems that are currently in the game or have now been added to the game by myself. What I'm looking to do is actually go and create custom bases out in the world that you can take over by quests. And that's going to take a little bit more work, but it is possible. And so because of that, I am putting that out to November, possibly December, where it might come in a two-part release where half of it comes out in November, half of it comes out in December. First and foremost is probably going to be the items themselves to continue to build with. And then the second part will actually be the map content and building out those world map bases. The issue that we ran into previously is that the information cannot be easily synced between network players. So when you would go and utilize the base building to throw down an object, it was not actually calling the network to sync that prefab to the other player. So because of this, it became a single player only feature. Wasn't a big fan of that, because I would like to make that something that two players could pull their resources, defend by pulling their resources. And so I'm continuing to look into that system. And then also I wanted to make sure that I had some way of removing or rotating or updating items that were already placed. Currently, you throw them down and that's pretty much it. I've been looking into the health system that they have inside the logic for destroying objects. And kind of the idea that I had was, you get a building hammer, and then with that hammer, you're able to actually, go and destroy the object and then place a new one. But there's a couple other conditions, such as there's not a grid system inside the game, so being able to rotate these objects dynamically, being able to place these objects, to the degree that a lot of base builders enjoy, being able to snap pieces together, that definitely doesn't exist in the game. I'm confident it is something that could be added, but it would definitely need some support, probably to pull off a system like that in the future. But hey, I'm available if anybody wants to spitball. I know that there are some parts of this that can be added to the game without much heavy lifting. That's where I'm always going to try to start, is bringing this new content to the players to get your guys' feedback first, so that once you guys get the idea, we get the feedback loops. Maybe you guys will have ideas, or some of you will have the skill sets that we can use to pull off some of these features in the future, or iterations of these in the future. Again, Techland's reached out. I'm very hopeful, but we'll see. And so again, hopefully I can share some details here in the next couple of weeks, but we'll see how it goes. Now on to the Patreon supporter milestones. So I wanted to talk about these just very briefly. This is a big talking point for the mod, because I realize that so many mods online are starting to come behind paywalls. That is not the intention with this mod. The idea here is that for anybody who wants to contribute to the mod, as I've had many people come along and they just want to help contribute to the work, it's my way of giving back to the people that are donating money, so that they are able to receive something for their donation. I truly appreciate that anybody would consider doing that for me. I appreciate that greatly. And so this is my way of giving back to those users. And one of the things that comes along with that is custom content designed for my Patreon supporters. So with each tool that I've shown off so far, the idea is that first, I'm going to utilize those tools to support the Patreon supporters who have already supported me. And so a lot of those tools, which I have a lot of tools actually coming up here as well, including launchers and all sorts of fun things coming up for the mod. But along with that, I want to make sure that I'm giving back to the Patreon supporters for their support for the mod. And so for each one of these, to add clarification, when I first put this out, I originally had 25 for that first number. What I meant by that is I also had new Patreon supporter milestones. I put that back out. I put that out when I had around 25 current Patreons. Since then, it's actually gone up quite a bit to, I think we're at like 54 now. Thank you guys again. And so I wanted to change some of the language here to clarify what was meant there. The idea is that as the Patreon supporters are donating to the work, some of these features are getting released to everyone, such as the new enemies. So that's actually coming out for everybody. But then certain ones are actually getting developed for specific Patreon supporters, such as the ones that are listed where it says to each Patreon supporter that content will go specifically to the Patreon supporters that they can access through the Patreon content. And then for the ones that specify for Ultimate supporters, those are going to be ones that are developed for each individual Ultimate supporter who has supported me over that time period to reach that many subscribers. And then that last one, it's probably the most complicated out of all of them, is definitely the build your own feature installer. It's something that I've looked at, definitely is something that's been requested. The challenge is not implementing it, it's supporting it. As once it all gets implemented, continuing to support it with every update, because it's hard to explain just how much time and energy has gone into bringing this overhaul along with every update as quickly as it is. And so being able to actually create a feature installer to where you have being installed go is actually something that's going to take some thought and some process to design accordingly. So that will be coming out. I will have it. I just have set it as something that once we reach 500 Patreon supporters, that's something that I will add. And that's really where the rest of this is is where the Patreon supporter milestones feeds into the roadmap. I'm currently working on the 2024 development roadmap. There are more features. There are more exciting things that I'm working on that I have not added to this list. More will be coming, but there's just not enough time in the day to do all of it, such as new locations, underground cities. There's so many different things. There's a play the zombie mode that I recently figured out how to do, that I actually think would be really freaking cool. That would allow you to actually start a game as an enemy, and it wouldn't be the campaign. You would just be able to play on a map that is the main map, but it would be kind of, you would essentially help spread the infection there at the start, kind of thing. And so hiding in the dark from enemies, and then trying to take them down, kind of thing, until you become strong enough to wipe out large number of enemies. I have the vision and the scope on how to do it. There's just not enough time in the day with everything else. And so I am looking to bring some of these new features to 2024. So please stay tuned for more. And thank you guys so much again for all your support and listening in. These updates will continue to roll. All the Patreon content will continue to pour into these updates as the roadmap develops. It's going to be a lot of work. I'm excited to hear you guys' feedback. I'm excited to work for you guys to get this game, where you guys would like to see it go, because there's a lot of fun stuff that could happen here in the engine. I'm excited to be able to develop so much for you guys, and I appreciate the support and the feedback. Thank you again to the community. Thank you to the Nexus. Thank you to Techland, and thank you to the Patreon supporters who have helped fund and make this possible. Thank you, everyone, and look forward to seeing you next time. Happy gaming. Stay safe out there.